to do is introduce myself, Lacey Shane. I'm the CEO of Real Women, Real Success. And one thing I wanted to share is just that this is going to be very informal. I don't really enjoy doing formal presentations. I don't memorize things. I just have notes. I have an outline. So I'm going to be referring to that when I'm talking to remind myself of what I'm going to say. I'm going to unmute and mute during times that we're going to have a verbal exchange because I am recording this and I don't want to infract on your privacy or anything. And I have a board behind me that I'll draw some things on a little bit later. And that's it. So a little background on me. I was in the nonprofit management field. I was a CEO for 20 years. My career was 30 years. And throughout that tenure in my nonprofit career, I owned and operated a variety of businesses, with one or two with an ex-husband, some on my own, and had the opportunity to run a business before the internet became a thing, and in a variety of different environments. So I did the gift business, landscape business, transcription. I was a consultant for a while, and I think I always wanted to have that entrepreneurial spirit and express that in my life. But what ultimately ended up happening to me is what happens with so many women in their careers, is that they become disillusioned. Perhaps they're in a toxic environment. Perhaps it's not really feeding their souls. I certainly found myself in that situation. I was in a nonprofit that was in the field of politics, and literally it was killing me. There was days where I would get up and could barely walk to the bathroom to get ready for work. And after I had a diagnosis of thyroid cancer, I realized I really need to find a way out. I'd been coaching women a little bit, coaching women on how to climb the corporate ladder, how to deal with difficult people, how to be successful in a team and in the workplace. And I really loved doing that. So I thought I would become a certified coach and start a business doing that. And one of the things that happened at the same time is my husband decided the same thing. He's a career firefighter, battalion chief for the city of Beverly Hills, and decided he wanted to start coaching entry-level firefighters. And one of the reasons that we kind of know how to make this transition from having a paying career to owning your own business successfully is because we both did it at the same time. We had to plan financially, and we had to take the other two steps that I'm going to share at the end of this webinar. But the biggest challenge, obviously, is financially, right? For a lot of years, I coached women who wanted to climb the corporate ladder, who wanted to be more successful, who weren't just very fulfilled in their jobs. And as time went on, for a couple of years in doing that kind of coaching, what I really found out is the women were saying, you know what, I think it's not how to be successful in this environment that I want. I think what I really want is to start my own business like you did. So that's how I started teaching how to build an online following, how to deal with your finances, how to actually make this transition. So my husband and I planned for a couple of years to do this, both financially and by building an online presence. And one of the things that I have been working on teaching my one-on-one clients is how to make this leap successfully, how to create financial security and going from a full-time career to a full-time business gradually, because that's what a lot of women need to do, right? They can't just make the leap in one huge step. So that's kind of what this is about. When I started making that shift towards what women were telling me they wanted, it really coincided with a lot of things happening in the world. So right now, let's see, I think the stats are the workforce is 60% employees, 40% independent contractors or / business owners. And in just 11 years, that's going to flip. And 60% of the workforce will be business owners or independent contractors, and 40% will be employees. So there's this huge shift, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, people are getting tired of a lack of leadership. As much as leadership training has become in vogue for corporations and for executives, it hasn't really made a dent in the livability, the likability of the workforce, the work environment. 80% of people hate their jobs. So, and when you consider that we spend 3/4 of our life in a job, that's abysmal percentages. So leadership training isn't making its mark, but I also think that we as women tend to give and give and give. to others, to our families, to our jobs, to our obligations, and we often get left out. And I think more and more women are saying, if I'm going to work this hard, I'd rather do it for myself. So then you're really just left with, how do you make this transition? How do you actually do this? So that's how I got into sort of coaching and teaching the stuff that I'm going to be sharing today. One of the things that I really want to encourage anybody who's watching this to do is, there's a Harvard study that talks about their college graduates. They studied a couple of different years of college graduates, and they found that of 100% of them, 84% had goals but didn't write them down. 13% had goals and wrote them down. And 3% had goals and wrote them down and had an action plan to achieve them. So the reason I bring this to your attention, my slogan for 2019 is Go Big in 2019. And whether that means creating your long on-ramp to owning your own business, or actually means making the leap, that's kind of my theme for the year, is to help women do that. But in this study, they went and revisited all those students 10 years later, and they found that the 84% who knew their goals but didn't write them down, some had achieved their goals, some hadn't. But the 13% that wrote down their goals, on average, made twice as much as the 84%. The 3% that wrote down their goals and created action plans to achieve them made 10 times as much as all the other people. So I really want to encourage you to write down your goals for 2019 and create some incremental action steps, even if you only do it in 90-day increments that are actually tactical. The part where you say, I'm going to do this and this and this to meet this goal, because that's what leads to success. It's been researched and proven. So let's see here. I think what I'm going to do then is share my screen, and we're going to go over each section of the planner. So let me do that. So here's the financial planner. I've kind of wordsmithed this now to 95 Exit Strategy Financial Roadmap. Whether you have a job currently or you don't have a job, and you've already made the leap and you're trying to make your business go, this all still works. It's still valid for trying to create your financial roadmap. And again, one of the reasons I'm doing this today is because when I sent this out, or when you subscribed to my email list and got this planner or this roadmap, I got a lot of feedback that it was a tad overwhelming. So I wanted to take the time to actually go through it step by step. So the stats I just shared with you, that change is coming, the future of employment, on the left-hand side there, I'm just giving you some stats on the changing face of the workforce. The largest segment of the population that's making this shift is 55 and older. I'm 55, so I guess I'm right in that demographic. And the thing that makes it even more likely of success is that there's almost nothing that you can't find on the internet. When I had my first businesses, one of my first ones was a gift business, and I had no way to research my customer. I had no way to figure out what they wanted. I really had no way to do all the things that you need to do to have a successful business. I didn't have a way to go look at what materials might cost, or to compare costs, or to compare suppliers for different things. So there really are huge opportunities on the internet, in addition to the fact that any kind of research you can do on the internet, whether it's how to start a business or what the startup costs might be, you can usually find quite a bit of information for free, just like a lot of my information is for free. And the reason for that is that a lot of times people have blogs to bring them self-recognition, or they actually have something to sell down the road. I'm a coach. I love to get coaching clients, so that's part of the reason I do it. I also just do it because I love to help women. I really have a passion for helping women. I think that women get left out a lot, as I mentioned earlier, and I really want to be a force for helping women to achieve a life that they love. So that's part of why I do what I do too. But you can find almost anything you need on the internet, and that is what makes it so incredibly, so much easier to succeed than it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago as an entrepreneur. The information is just readily accessible for you. So on the right-hand side, this is the first step to figuring out your financial plan. And this is your income, your monthly income. So that would be either from your job specifically. This depends on how you're working this. If you're looking at your finances, let's say you're married and you have an entire income with you and your spouse to consider. Your monthly income would be both you and your spouse, and your expenses would be both of you. If you're just considering, if you're saying, well, I am married, but I just need to make sure that I take care of my part of it, then you can do this as just your income and your expenses and your portion of it. So you have to decide how you want to fill this out and what brings you the most benefit, if it's considering the household as a whole or if it's just you. This is just fixed monthly expenses. So if you put in your monthly income and you go down to the rent, in the rent or in the house payment, you want to include, if you have like in-pound accounts or things that pay the insurance, or if you have your taxes saved up and it's all part of your house payment, make sure and account for that. You know, a lot of this is self-explanatory. Your car payment, transportation, if you use, you know, a lot of people use Uber now or take the bus. So that's legit. You may or may not have car insurance. Medical insurance, one of the things that often gets overlooked is co-payments. So if you go to the doctor regularly and you have co-payments, utilities, car maintenance, that's something that gets overlooked a lot. Your car maintenance, your gas to get to and from work if you do use a car, your phone, bank charges, another thing that gets overlooked a lot, groceries, and self-care. So a lot of women will, we all know, go to get our hair colored or have our nails done, have a mani-pedi, whatever, any kind of self-care. And I see one of our attendees out there waving and cheering me on that one. So, and these are sort of non-negotiable. Some people might say self-care is a negotiable item, except that if you're in a professional environment and you need to look good, sometimes it's not. So up to you to decide on that. This part is pretty important as far as the debt, figuring your debt, because this is the biggest area where you can find some wins for yourself. Now, some people don't have a lot of debt. My husband and I have worked really hard over the last 8 years to pay off almost all our debt. We just have a house payment now, but paying down some of my debt was the key for me being able to leave my job. And this is how you figure it out. So you need to put your creditor down there and your monthly payment and your balance. And anything that you have a loan on, whether it's a credit card, your car, you have a line of credit, you have a second mortgage on your home, any kind of debt, you want to list all of that in this section under debt. And we'll get to why that's really important later. There's a strategy for paying that down that works really well. Okay, and then on the right, the discretionary spending. And this is things like eating out, movies, entertainment. Let's see. Well, I'm sure you guys can think of discretionary spending that you might do. Some people might consider manicures, pedicures discretionary. I did when I was getting ready to leave my job. I started actually doing my own toenails, my own fingernails and stuff. So that could be discretionary depending on your situation, but it's anything you don't have to spend. It's anything that you make a choice to spend on and you want to get a total for that. So on the debt, you want a monthly total and a balance total. And on the discretionary spending, you want a monthly total. Okay, so now here's some obvious things to think about. One of the biggest ways to cut down your spending is to think about things that you may not have thought of to cut your spending. The reason that we're doing this is that later on in this financial planner, we're going to come up with how much your business is actually going to cost you. And the only way to know, when someone asks me, hey, when can I leave my job? The answer is when you're able to cover your expenses in some way, right? If your goal is to make exactly what you're making now because your budget's really tight and you don't have a lot of extra wiggle room, then you're going to have to figure out a way to make enough money to cover that before you make the leap. Meaning you might start what I call a side hustle or whatever, work on your business while you're working your job. But it also could be a situation where you cut spending so that you can save some money. That's one of the things I did. I paid down my debt and I saved a bunch of money. I saved like $40,000. So that was not going to cover a lot in my life. But with all my debt paid off, I didn't need a lot because my housing was not costing me any money. My husband paid for that, you could say. So it depends on your specific situation, but you want to look at some things that you can do to cut your spending. So I'm just going to list off a few potential discretionary spending items that you might be able to cut. The mani-pedis, the hair, subscriptions are something that a lot of people don't think about, whether it's a newspaper subscription. A lot of news is available on apps or free online now, so maybe that's something. There's a lot of capability to reduce your cable bill, so maybe you don't need as many movie channels. Phone bills, so my husband and I, even though we don't need to do this anymore, we decided to save some money and switch our phone accounts. There's a lot of service providers that have as good coverage as what we had. So we were able to cut our cell phone bills like by 2/3. Gym memberships, there's a lot of ways to work out without going to the gym. Sometimes you can look at selling a vehicle if you're willing to have transportation in a different way. Increase your deductible on your insurance. Believe it or not, keeping your tires properly inflated saves you on gas. Refine your home. It's not a decision everybody wants to make, but it certainly is a possibility. Consolidating student loans. Balance transfers. So a lot of times when you do balance transfers, they'll give you a free interest rate for zero interest rate for like 6 months or something. So if you decide to do that, you can transfer your balance and save on the interest payments. And then once that is done for 6 months or whatever they offer, sometimes it's a year, then you can move that balance back to the other credit card. You have to look at the specifics of your credit card companies, but that's another way to look at saving some money. And there's a specific reason we're looking at saving some money here. So another thing is to unplug unused electrical devices when they're not in use. That'll save you a little bit of electricity. Turn down the hot water heater. Cancel any memberships that you don't need. Less expensive entertainment options. Let's see, I got another handful here. Cooking at home, one more time a month. Like my husband and I were really used to going out to eat when we had our career jobs. So we cut back on that. It was worth the sacrifice to be able to start our businesses. Start a garden. A lot of people grow their own herbs and vegetables. It's not that hard to do if you have the time to do it. Buy generic. Shop your auto and home insurance to lower that. Buy secondhand. I don't know if you've ever heard Thread Up. THRED Up is a great secondhand clothing store. I already said decrease the number of times you eat out each week. Turn the heater down at night, meaning your gas or electric heater. Have potlucks instead of going out with your friends. Shop at a cost-effective grocery store. Coupons, of course, and discount codes. Track and plan your spending. Believe it or not, it's sort of like when they say lose weight, write down everything you eat. If you write down everything you're spending on, then it's usually quite an eye-opener, and you can start to see some areas where you can cut back there. There's the cash-only method. So that's where you take out all the money you're going to need for a month, and then you divide it up into weeks and put it in an envelope. And when the cash is gone, it's gone. So you are forced to sort of parse it out a little bit differently than you're used to. And some of you might be saying, you know what, I don't like to live that way. Like, I've never lived that way. I've had a career job. I've been successful all my life. And that is true. But I think one thing to think about is what kind of change in your life is going to make if you make these sacrifices and you actually have a job that you love, a business that you love, that meets your needs, that is more flexible, where you're the boss. You're not, someone else isn't telling you what to do. You're deciding what to do, and it's all for your family. It's something you can hand down to your kids or pass over to loved ones. You know, there's all kinds of reasons to make a temporary sacrifice for a permanent gain. So I would encourage you to think a little bit about that. Yeah, it's a little pain, but the potential for gain is really big. There's this concept called the 24-hour waiting period before you buy anything, and that is just if you're an impulse buyer, I can say in times past, there's been times when I have been, that you just wait 24 hours before you make the decision. You'd be surprised how the excitement wanes when you do that. Have no spending days. Don't shop when you're hungry. And unsubscribe from some of the retail store emails. So I know Nordstrom's and many of the retail stores, they just hit you daily with sales and all kinds of opportunities to buy stuff. So you can unsubscribe from those, get it out of your view. And then create rewards for yourself when you do decrease your spending. So maybe if you just, you said you created a rule that said I'm going to decrease spending by $200 for the month. And if I do that, I'm going to reward myself with a dinner out or something that's not all of your $200, but is a portion of it. So Here's what you're going to do with the savings, wherever you can cut down on the discretionary spending or cut down on your fixed bills, is you're going to let me go back to it, this debt, this creditor debt imbalance. You're going to go to the one that has the lowest payment. So to give you an example, when I was paying down all my bills, it took me about 4 years, and I started with this Jeep that I had purchased for my foster son, and the payment was $150 a month. It was the lowest payment of anything I had debt for. And so my savings, the savings that we just figured out from all the fixed, all the discretionary spending, you take that amount that you've saved, and in addition to the regular payment on that lowest amount, you add the savings. So let's take my example, $150 a month. If I saved $200 and my payment was $150, I would add the $200 to $150, and I would be making a payment of $350 a month to pay off that one bill, that car. So when you're paying that much more, it pays down the principal more, so you're going to pay less interest, and it pays down your debt exponentially quicker, okay? So you keep doing that every month. You take that savings that you were able to achieve and you apply it to that lowest payment until that entire debt is paid off, okay? Once that is done, now you take the payment from that debt, in my case $150, the savings you got $200, so $350, and you add that $350 to the next highest payment, and you pay that off over time until there's a zero balance. Now, what this is hard to do with is either a mortgage or a second on your home. So a lot of times, you know, if you were to do this, you would never start your business, right? You've got a 30-year loan and you may not be able to do it, but it provides you some incredible flexibility if you've got credit cards, car loans, like a line of credit where you may have gotten like $10,000, $20,000 on your home to do a little improvement or something, or to take a trip or whatever. Those are the kind of things this works really well. This is based on a principle that Dave Ramsey has come up with, who is an expert on paying down debt. He's working towards a debt-free America. And it's one way to get your debt down so your financial needs are not so great when you go to make the leap to start your business. And I can't tell you what a great freedom it's been for me and my husband to pay off all our debt except our home. In terms of starting our business, things don't always go the way they're planned. They don't always start up as quickly as you would like. And it's nice to know that, you know, you're not going over a cliff financially. So this is something that you have to work out step by step on your own in your own situation, and chip away at some of those big numbers. Start with the small monthly payment and get to the bigger ones as you can, and you won't believe the freedom that you'll feel. Okay, so we just talked about the cut spending and pay down debt. Okay, so knowing your startup costs. This is, obviously I'm not an expert in every business. I told you in the beginning a few things that I've done, a nonprofit, a landscape business, a maintenance business, transcription, consulting, a gift business. I made little summer tops for a while, and I started a nonprofit and grew it. So that gives me a pretty broad breadth of understanding of a lot of different types of businesses. However, I may or may not understand your business. The thing is, what I said earlier, the internet affords you quite a bit of information in terms of figuring out what your startup costs are going to be. Now, one of the things that I'm going to talk about at the end of this workshop is one of the ways to decide what you're going to do. Now, you know, some of you watching this already know what you're going to do. Some of you may not, but there's some really important things to consider when you're deciding what your business is going to be. And one of them is the lifestyle that you want. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later, but if it's a lifestyle that's more flexible, where you want to work part-time, where you'd like to live wherever you want, you're probably looking at a business that is more of a content-based business. Doesn't have to be, but probably more of a content-based teaching, coaching, services type of business than a product-based business, okay? And if that's the case, your startup costs are going to be a lot different than a product-based business. So I have a jewelry company. My physical investment of supplies and website and all that were significantly different than my coaching business. So it's just something to think about. But this is just an idea of what some of your startup costs may be. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people in business make is they assume that if they build it, people will come. And in some instances, that's true to a certain extent. A lot of times what I see is when people get up to this wall of where they're not, really growing, their business isn't growing the way they'd like it to. They got to this point, but it's not growing further. This is the kind of the mistake they're making. And that is that all businesses are marketed online now. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is. It can even be business to business. But everybody, 100% of anybody who's involved in the economy, so that's anybody who has the power to buy, is statistically doing about 8 searches online before they decide who they're going to buy from. That's anything from who they're, again, buy a cake, buy cookies, buy jewelry, in my case, buy accounting services, trainings in academia, coaching, even searching for clothes online. When people are looking for any kind of products online, they're doing a lot of searches. So the point is that no matter who your ideal customer is, they're online and they're doing searches for everything that they use. So there's a real specific science and psychology to reaching people through the internet. As you know, I'm sure it's a very busy place. There's a lot of people out there trying to sell their wares. There's people who are great at what they do and have a great product. There's people out there who aren't so great. But the people end up buying from people they know, like, and trust. And there is a science to marketing to get people to know, like, and trust you, and to have that audience continue to build and build and build. So one of the mistakes I see is that people don't acknowledge, I don't know how to do that, and I need to learn it. So that's why I put training costs and education and coaching here. And of course, that's one of the things I do, but a lot of people do it. It doesn't have to be me. But one of the things businesses need to do is learn how to market themselves online, learn how to build a following that know, likes, and trusts them. And a lot of times people aren't budgeting for that. They don't want to spend the money. But you got to spend the money on the training you're going to need in order to get the results you want, in order to build the following. So no matter where you do that from, just keep that in mind. That has to be part of your startup cost. And it has to be part of your ongoing cost. My husband and I spend $25,000 a year keeping up on what's going on the internet, because it changes so fast. So it's just a fact of life. It's a business expense that if you want your business to really grow, it's something that you need to consider. The other thing that sometimes trips up businesses is the tech. There's a lot of people that do their own tech. I don't. I'm not a tech head. I'm a creative. My husband luckily is, but not everybody has a husband that does their tech. So another thing to consider really is the technology, whether it's a website, whether it's the way you're doing your emails to people or your social media presence, whatever that is. You can start doing it on your own if you want. It is a little bit of brain damage. It's worth it. It's good to know how these things work. But over the long haul, you want to be thinking about this will be a business cost for you long term. It will be, unless you just love doing it, it will be a business cost. And I like to say it's best for business owners to work on their business, not in their business. So the ultimate goal to go to that next growth is to work on the business and see if you can get to a point where you can afford to have other people work in the business. That makes sense. Okay. So when you're figuring out when you can make that leap to fully go to your job, the thing you need to know is what your total monthly personal fixed expenses are, and these startup costs, or what you consider your ongoing business costs. That's why I gave you this little template to work out. And there could be more monthly costs than this, but this is just a good start to give you an idea. So when you have that total amount, your expenses plus your business expenses, that's what your total monthly expenses are that you have to cover, okay? So when you look at that, the one thing you want to think about is you have several options, okay? You could, in fact, let me get out my little board here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick. So here's what I want to show you. Here's your options. So here is, let's say this is your, wrong pen. let's say this is your, I see a reflection on there, your time left in your career. Let's say this is 1 year and this is 2 years. Let's say you want to leave in two years. So at some point, if you're going to leave at the end of 2 years, that's the time period that you have to figure out how to cover those expenses, right? So you have several options. You could save enough money to fund yourself for, let's say, 2 or 3 years. I think it takes 3 to 5 years to really get a solid start on a business. So you could save, I saved for 3 years. You could save for 5. You could, at the very beginning, if you want, it's one of the things I teach is how to build a social media following or how to build a following online so that by the time, this is how I did it, this is how my husband did it, by the time you get to leaving your job, you've got a pre-made customer base, you know they're ready to buy from you. Perhaps like me, you've already started selling something at this point, right? So about a year into my decision to leave, I had started coaching. So I was saving some money. I was coaching to bring in more money. And by the time I got to this point, between what I had saved and the coaching income, I had made up that amount of money that I knew I needed to live on from month to month. This is a great, building this social following while you're still working is a cool plan because it doesn't take that much effort and it doesn't take that much technological savvy. It does take marketing and online psychology savvy, but it doesn't take a lot of time. So it's kind of a cool thing that you could be growing your following, that know, like, and trust. People are going to buy from you while you're writing out your last year or two at your job. Again, you could also pay down and save. There's a number of different ways to skin that cat. And if you want to right away start really, really doing your business, having it scale while you're still working, then what you would do is you would build this social following path. It's a map, and you would do some advertising to really get this going. Okay, so you wouldn't just rely on what they call organic traffic, people just finding you or you finding them. You would actually do some advertising to really push people into your process of know, like, and trust. Okay, so those are a couple of ideas of how you make the expenses and the business meet so you can make that leap. So I just tried to give you these options here on the left, the starting the side hustle, meaning you start your business and start developing some income before you leave your job. We talked about cutting your expenses, but you can also look at saving some money. And then, I don't like to suggest this because I'm not a fan of more debt, but I'm not saying debt is bad either when it comes to starting your business. There's the idea of SBA loans, taking out a loan to start your business. The problem is that I see sometimes is, let's say someone takes out a second on their home to start their business. They've got their startup costs and they're planning on 2 to 3 years. Starting a business is a hustle. I mean, it's doable. It's totally doable, but it's work. And sometimes having that cushion, I've noticed, gets people a little comfortable. So maybe they're not hustling as much as if you ever watch Shark Tank, they say this all the time. Barbara Corcoran says, I like my entrepreneurs starving and hungry, and meaning hungry for success, because she finds that they hustle more than the ones who are kind of a little comfortable. So I think sometimes getting a loan can create some comfort, some unrealistic comfort that slows things down for the business. But that's not true of everybody. It's just a judgment on some people I've seen, some businesses I've seen, but it still is an option. So something to consider. Let's see. Talked about saving enough money to cover your expenses. Again, after having, 8 different businesses in my lifetime, it's never taken less than 5 years for me to get really things humming along. We're coming up on about 3 to 4 now in our businesses, and they're getting really close to where we want them, but there's still some work to be done. So it just takes time. It takes time for people to get to know you. It takes time for people to get to trust you. It takes time to get those testimonials and stuff published that really shows the good work that you're doing. So just be realistic. The overnight success stories are often not overnight successes. I have a mentor who said it took me 10 years to become an overnight success. So just be wary of those people out there that say, you can do this, quickly. It's actually not that easy to do quickly. So, and then I just have a little bit of a reality check here to let people know, women know that you have to get in the mindset of continually learning. Things are continually changing. Market, even for brick and mortar stores, is not just out on the street anymore. Foot traffic isn't going to cut it. It has to be online. So, I shared earlier, my husband and I spend $25,000 a year on education, and it's worth every penny. Every time we do that, we double our revenue. So just know that if you apply what you learn and you've purchased it from the right person, it's going to pay dividends to you. But if you don't do that education and don't make that investment in yourself and your business, you're going to be operating at a deficit. It's really important to have that education and knowledge. Keep yourself up on the latest with regards to marketing your business. So then let's see, I have a little thing here that's just being encouraging to you about the idea that when you get into marketing your business online, sometimes it requires that you pivot. So if you can keep an open mind about that, I'll give you an example. I started my jewelry company. This is one of my pieces right here. This is a vintage brooch. It's from the Victorian era. And this is what I make, cuffs, necklaces, earrings made out of vintage jewelry, right? When I started, I was having a hard time getting customers. And so I started doing these online live events where people could get to know me. I started kind of teaching how I made my stuff. I started doing some wholesale events for vintage jewelry and teaching people how to make things on their own. I pivoted towards what people were interested in. And that has made my jewelry business successful. Now, ironically, it has landed me back to where I wanted to do in the first place. But I had to take that sort of divergence to get there. And it may or may not have led back to what I was doing originally. And I was willing to go there. So I guess what I'm saying is when you figure out what your ideal customer wants, sometimes you have to pivot to go give it to them. And that might mean some changes in your business. So I like to set up that mindset so that we don't try to sell something that's not saleable, or that even if it's the most wonderful thing in the world, people aren't going to buy, okay? Or maybe not buying the numbers that you want, okay? So that's just my contact information that you have in your planner. Okay, so that is how you think about working through the financial planner. And as promised, I wanted to go through the second and third steps to really nailing this concept of leaving your job and starting a business. Step 2, because I promised you the 3 steps to really make this transition from leaving your job and starting your business successful. And the biggest part, step 1, is the finances, right? It's the thing that really is the most challenging for most of us, right? So we just covered that. But step 2 is to really look at the life you want to have, right? I think oftentimes when people are advising women, I say women because that's all I work with, how to start a business, that a lot of times they start with interests, passions, skill sets. Well, that's wonderful. When I started my jewelry business, I didn't know a darn thing about vintage jewelry. I figured it out because it just seemed like something I'd love, and I still do love it to this day. But listen, here's the thing that I missed the boat on when I started that. That business became labor intensive. I was working 80 hours a week, more than the job I left. And that wasn't the idea of starting my own business, right? I hadn't considered the lifestyle that I wanted. So I encourage you to think about, even if you already have a business, the lifestyle that you want. What kind of hours do you want to work? What kind of things do you want to be able to do with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends? Do you want more freedom? Do you want to be able to work from anywhere? Do you want to be able to call the shots and only work till 3 p.m, or only work Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays? Those things that are really part of your dream life, if you identify them up front and choose your business or your business model Based on that decision, you're going to be a lot happier. Now, it may take you 80 hours a week to build everything that you need to make that a part-time business. That's certainly what I have experienced. But now, after 4 years, we're getting to the point where we can afford and have the ability, with our full-time income coming from our businesses, to travel and to kick it back a little bit and to be able to enjoy life a little bit more and have time for our families. So what I'm saying to you is to design your business the way you want your life to be. Because if you design a business that long-term takes up as many hours of the day as your prior job did, eventually it will be not so fulfilling. When I first started my jewelry business, when I was making all this stuff, 80 hours a week, I was starting to not like it. So I've been able to figure out how to love it again. And that's through sort of changing my business model and making my business model in my jewelry company and my coaching business match the lifestyle that I want. Okay, so learn the lesson from me. Start with the lifestyle and then build the business from there. It will inform your decisions. Really, really important. Because remember, the goal is to be happy. That's the goal. Okay, step 3 is to build your online following. So as I was showing you earlier, right, with online following, building this over your last 2 years, that is such an integral part of being able to leave your job, to be able to leave and know that you have something to jump to, that you have customers or potential customers that already love you, trust you, want to know what more you have to give them, want to buy from you, want your services, want your expertise, want your fun, want your cake decorating or your cookie decorating or your jewelry or your coaching or whatever you have to offer. You know, when you're building this know, like, trust over years, your on-ramp is longer and you build that following. It's so, so integral. You cannot build a following overnight. It just doesn't happen. You can speed this process up through advertising because there's a nurture sequence in here where you nurture people so they know you're the real deal, so they know you really want to give them something of value, and there's a whole process to that, a whole psychology to it, okay? So here's how that works. First of all, you have to understand that every business is marketed online these days. To scale any business, you need to market online. Everybody's online. I've heard people say, oh, my clients aren't online. Everybody's online. The trick is to figure out how to reach them, right? Where do they hang out? That's something I can help you with. But there's a lot of people out there that can help you with it. Everybody is online. It takes time to build trust, and you have to think about it like you build any relationship, like you build a friendship, like you build your relationship with your spouse, like you build a relationship with a friend. It takes time to build know, like, and trust. So you have to allow for that time. And provide yourself a longer on-ramp to starting your business, but you know that you're building that loyal following and client base while you're still working. And it's fairly easy to do. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And then you can decide, do I want to start my business here as a side hustle? Do I want to wait? Do I want to do some advertising to really build this up so I've got thousands and thousands of people in my email list? Whatever you decide, it's customizable, but it does take time. So you just have to acknowledge that, and it does take training. It does take training. So what does it take to build a longer on-ramp? Well, first of all, you have to understand the psychology of online marketing and reaching people through the internet. It's not as simple as walking up to someone at a cocktail party and saying, hi, my name is. You're trying to replicate the emotions and the interaction that happen in that kind of personal engagement, but it happens differently online. So you have to understand how that psychology works and how to meet people where they're at online. You need an email list. You need a way to draw them to you. You need a way to find them, and you need a way for them to find you. And then you need a way to get their email and their first name so you can capture them. Selling online means you have to have an email list. You cannot be successful at selling marketing anymore unless you have an email list. So this is all about building your email list. You need a lead magnet. You have to have the tech set up to where once they get into your email list, they get your freebie, whatever your lead magnet is, and then you nurture them. And there's a certain way that you do that with certain topics and certain emails along the way. And then depending on how long your on-ramp is, you continue to communicate with them regularly. And with different groups of potential clients or customers, the frequency could be different. So you need to think through what is the ideal frequency. Like, for instance, with accountants. Like I get emails from certain accountants. Once a month is just fine. Thank you very much. I don't need to talk about finances more than once a month. If I got something more than once a month, I wouldn't like that. But when it comes to fashion or something fun like jewelry, once a week might be okay. Okay, I do my jewelry emails once every couple of weeks. If it's coaching, if it's personal development, there might be, depending on who your ideal client is, different intervals, you know, it could be from a week to every month to every 2 weeks, but there's a thinking process that needs to go on there that sets up a plan for you to regularly communicate with the people that you're getting on your list, to keep them engaged and keep them knowing you're out there for them, and to keep the situation going where you're giving them some free content, free information, so that they become your loyal followers, right? When you have something to sell, they're going to want that. When you have something to offer, they're going to want to buy from you. They're going to want to follow you. They're going to want to get your coaching. They're going to want to buy your product. They're going to want to buy your course. They're going to want to do whatever it is, your event, you know, your experience, whatever it is that you have going. This is the way that you build that following for success. And you can do it while you're ramping down on your job so that those two meet and you have a more stable and comfortable exit from your job and a more comfortable launch to your business. So let's see if I have any more notes here. That's it. That is the 3 steps to a successful launch of your business and leaving your job. Starts with that integral financial piece. I hope that was helpful to you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate those of you that were on today. I really enjoyed meeting you. And I have some more for you coming in the next week. Be looking for another email to share with you some further steps you can take if you'd like to continue working on this path of leaving your job and making your business really successful. I'm putting the finishing touches on something that I think will be helpful to you. So be looking for that. So I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your undivided attention. It was great to get to know you and talk to you. And I look forward to seeing you at a future online event. And feel free to reach out to me via email if you have any questions, okay? And look for that email on what's coming up in the coming week, okay? Take care, and let's go big in 2019.